Hey, welcome back. So this fight, once you clear the council, you get to start the new three boss series, and it's kind of going to be this repeat where it's like three bosses, and the third boss is a big one that drops tier, and it's really hard. Repeat, repeat, repeat until the end of the instance. But this guy, since he's the start of like a new segment in this raid encounter, like he's also the start of the raid finder segment because they break it down by three bosses each. He's just like he's supposed to be kind of easy, but he's also just like really freaking fun. I don't know. It's a pretty zen fight once you get into the rhythm of it. But like, here's the abilities. Basically, there's some really important tank mechanics to watch out for. Like really important. There's a timer for this thing that the actual boss does, Tortos, called Snapping Bite. It does a crazy amount of physical damage, and it's like the if you're a tank, you need to line up your active mitigation for this big attack right here, blah. So, I mean, you can try to precast like a heal on him and something like that, but honestly, if the tank just does his job and like mitigates that damage up front, you really don't have to worry about the tank that's tanking the actual boss. Okay, and then the other tank, there's these little bats that'll be coming down called vampiric cave bats. You'll get a sampling of them as you clear the trash to this boss. Basically, if that tank has less than 550,000 health, they'll start doing this life drain and a lot more damage to him, like it'll drop him super quickly. So as a healer, it's your job to make sure that that off tank is like hella topped and that tank is using his active mitigation to try to stay at full health for as long as humanly possible. And then the way we handled that is we brought all of those bats to the boss himself, and then the melee just cleaved him down really quickly. However, now that we're doing this in heroic mode, I'm checking out some new strategies with how to handle those bats. It's been done where there's a lot of tanks or just classes in general that can kite those things forever. So if you have that and it works out better for you, you can just have one of your raiders just kite them the whole time. But that's really risky because you're not actually fully killing them off. If you get hit by like that little group, like just nudged a little, you're going to die in one hit. And here's the other mechanic that might not make that work for you. He does this thing called Quake Stomp. What it does is it just does a bunch of physical damage to the raid. It's unavoidable, and it stuns you briefly, but it also comes out quicker than every minute, so you can't just spirit shell cheese it or something like that. But what you can do to cheese it is it's perfect for halo timing, so just as he's casting it, drop a halo in the middle of the room, and then while you're stunned, the halo will be exploding like outwards and heal everybody up. That's why it's risky to kite those vampiric bats, because you get stunned and it puts a quick slow in your like kiting thing. But you know, Death Knight's one of the best classes for kiting those things. There's a million ways to get out of stuns, so I mean, you know, it's up to your raid comp how you decide to handle those. There are two other mechanics. One of them is called Rockfall. That's what those little blue circles are. They're stalactites falling from the ceiling. Don't stand in it or you'll probably die, and the way it works is if it falls on you, it's actually proximity based, like if it falls near you. If you're 20 yards away, you won't take any damage. So there's a couple ways of approaching it. One is to like group up and then move like as a big raid and try to stagger them all close together, but the other, which we found more effective, is just spread out all over the room, because that reduces the cleave damage that they're doing to all the other raiders, because, you know, if they stack on top of one another like they are right now, and everybody's within 20 yards, it's a lot of raid damage going out. Okay, now here's the fun part of this encounter. He'll summon these little spinning turtles that flip out at you. The ranged DPS are supposed to burn them down, but melee can help cleave them while they're coming out. Two things about them. One, it's really important to get slows on them. Like, that's more important than even doing DPS to them, is just make sure that these guys are slowed, because the slower they're moving, the easier it is to deal with them. There are some classes that are really, really good at this. Hunters get some good area slows at the beginning. Rogues can get some good crippling poisons out on them, have long duration at the start, and Affliction Warlocks can do a soul burn, curse of exhaustion on them at the start, which is all really useful stuff to have. You want to burn one of the shells down right away, because you always want to have at least one shell sitting down ready to get kicked. Now, the way you kick it, you'll see, is you approach a shell and you'll get a little extra action button appear, and the way it works is you have to click on the shell. You need to stand perfectly behind it and line up so you're facing the boss, and then you need to click the button, and you can't move while you're clicking it, because if you move, it'll suddenly like change directions. So that's how you kick it in the right direction. There will be a little targeting arrow to show you where you're kicking it right before you kick it off. Okay, now the thing with doing this is every now and so often he'll get a certain amount of fury, and then he'll cast this thing called Furious Stone Breath. It's going to wipe the raid if it's not interrupted. So the way you interrupt it is you kick a shell at him, and it interrupts him. Now, have more than one person kicking shells, because that one person could get tied up with something or something could happen. So it's just always good to have like multiple people looking out for it. The other thing this does is it debuffs things when it's kicked. So if there's other shells in the way, like coming out as they're spawning, or there's bats over by the boss, or you're kicking it at the boss, which you should be to interrupt his breath, you actually debuff everything that the shell hits, and they take 25% more damage. So this is really sweet as a priest, because if you take Twist of Fate and you're rolling atonements, you can cheese the amount of damage you're doing and subsequently the amount of healing you're doing with atonement spam. And that's really an interesting strat to take on this fight, because as you can see here at the end, you dip below a certain percentage of health and shells just fly everywhere, and so you're going to be moving around a lot. There are some other cool strats I've seen though, like one of which is rolling renews with cascades and Holy Serenity. Another one is just doing a bunch of instant AoE heals in Chakra Sanctuary, and another is just doing, absorbs, power word shield spam, and spirit shell spam. However you approach it's up to you. Good luck and have fun.